Hey there, it's late at night, just clicked after midnight. I'm a little bleary-eyed after putting together this last video, kind of kicked my butt, but I'm hoping it helps. It's the fourth in the series of the digital negatives that we've been working on, and even though it's not the final one, I'm probably going to do one after this. This one is the nitty-gritty. You're going to be making your first final curve for whatever process you're doing this with right now. But anyway, there's a few things that I wanted to say that I forgot to put in the video, and first, I hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. But don't bother doing that until you've seen the video. Anyway, I also just wanted to say that if you do purchase this project from Richard Boatwell, the Quickcurve DN program that I'm working on, I really wish you would do it through the link below because it not only helps Richard, it gives me a little bit of a juice as well. And it's been a lot of work putting this together, and I do it because I love doing it and I love spreading the word. But if you wanted to help out a little bit, one way that you can is going to my Patreon, and the link is below for that. Now, I've only started that recently, and I really want to start to try to build a community in it. And really, all it takes is $1 a month, and I'll try to make it worth it. It's really not that much, but it means the world to me, and it means the world to anybody that's creative. And it really helps us. If there's a lot of people out there giving you $1 a month, it really helps, and you can get on to doing what it is that you do rather than trying to worry about the car payments and the bills and that kind of thing. Anyway, I hate to do the grovel, and feel free. I don't do this for the money, obviously, but I really enjoy you watching these, and I really enjoy the comments that I've been getting. Please keep them coming, and I hope this helps. And so let's get on with part 4. All right, take care. Hi there, and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. I'm Bill Schwab, and I'm here with part 4 of the digital negative series that we've been working on. Now, when last I left you in the last episode, which is up here right now, we had done a blocking density target test, and we had printed that out, as you can see right here. And then what we had done was printed that test strip, and we came up with this. And what we discovered on this was that we had a blocking density of number of 50 is what we had as our corresponding number. Now, you can go back into the previous episode and see what I'm talking about if you're following along. But anyway, so what we really need to do now is we're going to take that number and we're going to put it into the program Quickcurve DN, the Richard Boatwell's program, and we're going to create a starter curve that we're going to be able to print out a 21-step wedge for our testing purposes. So what I want you to do is go back over here and open up Quickcurve DN. We loaded all of this the other day. You remember that from previous episodes. Now, what we've got here is the curve setup we want to open up. Now, you can see in the program here that there is an area for curve setup, and there's also for linearization. Now, we're not going to need linearization quite yet. We're going to be working up to that throughout this. What we're going to need to do right now is set up a starter curve. Now, this number 50 that we came up with previously, this number 50 is very important right now because this is going to be the number of the ink density that we're setting for the whole process that we're going to be working on. So what we want to go is set our main blocking density. You can see this down here, the slider. And this slider, what we want to do, and you can see as I'm sliding this how the starter curve moves on the side over there. Now, what we want to do is set that at 50 because that's the number that we came up with on our ink density target. So I'm going to set that at 50 right here. Now, you'll also notice that right down below that is a slider for yellow blocking density. Now, that's really not going to be needed by 99% of you. And just to briefly explain what it is, I've never had to use it. If for some reason on your density target test you found out that your corresponding white number was way up here, like in 70 or 75 or even higher, that means that the ink density on your printer isn't that high, and so what you've got to do is you've got to kick up the density of the yellow ink. Now yellow, it tends to be the best at blocking UV light. So by kicking up that yellow density, you're thickening up, so to speak, your negative and making it a little more dense. So otherwise, you're not going to really need that. I mean, you want to kick it up if you're having a problem and you're up in the 70s or something here. But otherwise, you're not going to need that slider. Now, the total ink load slider, that's something that will come in the future as well. When you're building your curves, what you do is you set up your starter curve, and you know, it's pretty much set up at one, you know, you've got one tonal range that you're going for, you know. So what you can do is you can up your total ink load, and it kind of ups everything in respect to each other. It ups it up a little bit so you can get a little bit brighter print, or a little, a little whiter print, a little lighter print, that kind of a thing. But once again, we're not going to need that right now for building our basic curve. So we're not going to worry about that slider. I just wanted to explain a little bit about what that was for. So we've got our main blocking density set at 50. Now we want to go up here, and you can see that there's printer selections. And as you know, I'm working on a P800 now. So I'm going to select P800. And then what I'm going to do is go back down here to, my, this toggle here where you can see starter curve. We're going to set up a starter curve right now, just standard starter curve. Okay, now you can put in some process notes here if you want. I don't usually do that. So now we've got our standard starter curve set up here, and what we want to do is save our current starter curve. So we're going to hit that down here, and where I want you to put this is in a special folder. And now this is another thing that I should have told you about, is what I would really like you to do is go first, before you do all this, is go over to your quad tone profiler folder that we set up the other day on the side, and I want you to put 4 new folders within that resource folder that came with your programming. And that's just going to help you organize certain things along the way. We're going to have different step scans that we're going to be, 21 step scans that we're going to be scanning. We want to keep those in a certain folder. We're going to have different curves that we're going to be building along the way, so we want a folder for those curves. And we're going to have to create data text files, which is something that I'll be explaining to you a little bit later in this video. And then also plain text files. So all of these things you want to keep separate, and I like to just set them up in 4 different folders within my quad tone profiler here. So anyway, back to our starter curve. Now that you know where I'm going to put this, I want to save my current starter curve, and where I am going to put that is going to be in the curves folder that I've just set up in my quad tone profiler. So in the curves folder, I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to call it starter underscore curve underscore P800, because that's the printer we're working with. Okay, so we're going to save that curve, and what that's doing is it's saving a quad file, and that quad file is something that we're going to need to get now into quad tone RIP. And set it up as a curve that we can again print out this first of our 21 step wedges, 21 step wedge curve strips, test strips. Excuse me, my brain is boggled, as yours must be, following along here. And I realize that this is a long process and that there's a lot of steps involved, but I'm just hoping that you'll follow me along step by step and have faith, because you will get there. Anyway, so we've created our standard starter curve. Now what I want to do is I want to take that curve, and we're going to go over here to our finder. We are opening this up. We go into our curves. You can see here we have our starter curve P800 quad. Now what I want to do with that is I'm going to open up another window in a new tab for quad tone RIP, from the quad tone RIP. And you can see down here I have my P800 UC. It's the profiles that we've been working with there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this starter curve and I'm going to copy it over into this folder. Okay? So we're all set up there. Now what I want to do is we're going to go back over to this quad tone RIP folder, And now what we do is we have to run the command file again. So we're going to go here and we're going to run P800, install P800 command. Double click on that and you can see the terminal window opens and the program is running, the installed program is running right now. Process is completed. I'm going to go back here just to make sure everything looks okay. There's no warnings, everything's good. Okay, I'm going to close that terminal window. Now we have that in our quad tone rip and we can use it to print. Now the next step of this is to go in and open up Print Tool that we set up the other day. Now as you can see, Print Tool is still set up for doing our blocking density target test. Now, what I want to do now is we're going to go over here in Print Tool, we're going to hit the plus, and we're going to go into our Quad Tone Profiler resource folder that we've set up, and we are going to go up here to 21-step grayscale negative TIFF. Now I'm opening that up and I brought that into Print Tool. Now you can see that this is a negative of the test strip that we're going to be working with throughout the rest of this program. Now, what I've done is I've put it in here into Print Tool below the blocking density curve where we were the other day, and for this reason, it's so we can use one sheet. So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to put this other print back into the printer like this, and it's going to print this new 21-step wedge along here, and what it's going to do is it will print it out with the curve, the starter curve that we've just created. So what we're going to do is, bear with me while I put this into the printer here. And we're now going to go up here to the blocking density strip, and we're going to take that out. Go over here to the minus and pull it out, okay? Now we're ready to print. So what we're going to do is down here to run print. We've chosen our P800 printer, that's the quad tone rip. I go down here to layout, I'm going to go to quad tone rip, and I'm going to choose where we were at the blocking density curve before. We're going to choose the starter curve that we just did. So let me look through here, I've got to find it. Here it is, starter curve P800. All right, so now we run print on this. And now while this is printing out, I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about what we're doing. Now, the thing is that we're going to run out this starter curve. I'm going to take it into the darkroom. I'm not going to bother you with any of the darkroom stuff today. I'm going to run a test strip of this in the UV burner, like we did the other day with the little test strips that we made. And then once that's done, I'm going to be bringing it back out here to you, and we're going to go on with the process here. So bear with me, and you'll see me again in a minute. Okay, so we're back out of the darkroom, and I've created the first of the 21-step wedge test strips. And this is from the starter curve that we just created a few minutes ago. And what we're going to do now is we're going to be moving on into the next step in this process. We're going to have to be taking readings off of this test strip. Now, unless you have a spectrophotometer or you have some other form of reading this strip, we're going to have to use just a common scanner from this point on. Now, I'm hoping that you all have a scanner, and if not, I know that there are other ways to read this strip. You're going to have to do a little research into that on your own. I might have an addendum video that I do in the future when I start finding out different ways of reading this step wedge. But what I wanted to do is bring this down kind of to the common denominator and make it as simple as possible, and that is to use a scanner. So, but also what we're going to need here is we're going to need, for the next steps here, I want you to have, or it's good to have a indelible marker, a Sharpie if you've got that, so that you can mark on the film the test strip so that you can keep that straight so you know where we are. And I'm going to mark on this first one that we did right here, starter curve, right out of the chute here. And so I've got that set up, and then I also want a pencil and a sheet of paper, because we're going to be taking readings from Photoshop and we're going to be marking them down on this, on a sheet of paper. Now, From that point, we're also going to need a word processing program of some sort. I use Pages on the Mac. You can use Microsoft Word, whatever, as long as you can create a plain text file with that, okay? So with that, all that said, why don't you gather these things up, and I'm going to take a little bit of a break here, and we'll be back in just a minute. So okay, so now what I've done is I've put the, and what I want you to do is I want you to put that step wedge that we just made, the first starter step wedge, I want you to put that on your scanner and scan it. Now everybody's got different scanner software. Basically what you want to do is just scan it as a basic scan. Don't make any adjustments to it, that kind of thing. Just scan it out straight and have it saved into a file. Now what I do is I have it saved directly from my scanner into that step wedge file, or the step wedge folder that we made in the quad tone profiler resource folder. So see here, you can open up in the step scans and you can see my starter strip first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that down and open it in Photoshop. And let's get a hold of that, bring it down here to Photoshop and open it up, and there you can see it open in Photoshop. Now it's scanned as an RGB file, and we want to change this immediately into a grayscale file. So before I do anything further with it, let's go up here, go to image mode, go over here to grayscale, choose grayscale, and discard color information, discard. So now we've got a grayscale image there of our scan. Now another thing I like to do on these is if you haven't adjusted the histogram when you were doing your scan originally, I like to go down here to make an adjustment curve and go up here to levels. And I like to look at my levels and make sure that everything is set right. Now you'll see that sometimes when you've scanned it, it will just it just gives you a basic scan. It doesn't correct for any kind of levels at all. So what I like to do is I like to pull my levels in just to the point where the curve starts. Now it's not really perceptible so much on here, but I just like to do it that way just so I have a nice crisp file to work with. Now you're not really changing anything because everything is relative as far as all the different steps go along the wedge. It just gives me a nice image to work with when I'm doing my when I'm checking my steps and getting my lab readings. Now what I've done there, I'm going to close that down and I'm going to say layer flatten. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this image counterclockwise because I like to start with the light strip and read it all the way down to the dark strip. So reading left to right, I'm going to turn this counterclockwise so that the lighter blocks are on the left. So here we're going to go image rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. There we go. Now, what I want to do is crop this image down. So I'm going to crop it right down to the edges of the test strip that we had there, just so there's nothing extra on there. So I have a nice clean image file here to work with. All right. So now that we have our step wedge image here, and we have it correctly oriented, it's changed to a grayscale, we've adjusted the levels to make sure that we get a nice crisp image, we want to go here and we want to open up the info window. Now to do that, if it's not already on your machine, you go up here to window, you go down here to info, and you choose it. So here we go, window, info, and it opens up this little window for me over here. Now what that does is it gives you a way to choose all of your different steps along here. It lets you be able to read them. Now what's going to happen here, we could read just the black, which is the K. We could go 93% on down, but what I like to use is the lab reading. So we go over here, and if it isn't already chosen, sometimes it defaults to the CMYK over here in the right, you can see. What I want you to do is take the eyedropper and choose lab color. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to use the L, the lab color reading, off of each one of these squares as we read them. Now again, we're going to start left to right. So we're going to start over here at the the white square, and we're going to read that. Now, that's where the piece of paper comes in and the pencil comes in. What I want you to do in a vertical column is to take each one of these readings that we make in the lab color and copy it over here. Now, before we do that, I want you to add a filter on here. Now, the reason being is that with the paper and the coarseness of the paper, each one of these steps will have some shadows and things like that in there, so you won't get a good clear reading. You can put your cursor over one spot and get one reading, and over another spot get a slightly different reading just because of the tooth of the paper. So what I want you to do is take and make a Gaussian blur level over this. So what we're going to do, go up here to filters and choose blurs, and we're going to go down to blur, and we're going to go over on blur, and we're going to choose Gaussian blur. Now, it's going to give us a choice of things to do. I like to go about 5 pixels, 4.8 pixels. So let's choose 5 pixels around the main one. And we're going to say OK. So now, when you see your image here, you're going to look, and it's going to look kind of blurry. Now, what's going to happen is that when we take our readings, it's going to take more of an average reading of that step, and therefore give us a more accurate number. At least I believe that. So we're going to go over here now. We're going to start on the left, like I said. So we're picking the first one, and it reads out at 97. So that 97 we're going to put over here, and we've got 97. Okay, and we pick the next one. The next one says 96. So we write right under 97. We write 96. Over here we've got the third step. We got 91. So we go to 91. And we've got the fourth step, we're at 85. So as you see, they're going down. So that's a good thing, because that means we have a little bit of separation each one of them. They all might not be like that. We might get some that are the same, and those are the ones that when you're building your curve, you're helping to separate those tonal values in there and get a little bit of separation between each step. So again, we're on number 4. Let's go to number 5. We're at 81. We go to number 6. And we're at 78. We go to number 7, and we're at 75. We go to number 8, and we're at 73. We go to number 9, and we're at 70. And since we're at 17. And then on the very blackest of the squares, we're at 6. So 0, 6. So now we have our column. We have our column of numbers here, and what we're going to do is move on to the next step from here. So now we've got our step reading. That's working out really well. I really like the look of the numbers right here. So now what we're going to have to do is I'm going to go down here, and I am going to open up my Pages program. Now, you may be opening up Word or something like that. But what we're going to do now is we are opening up Pages, and it is looking for a document here. I'm going to say a new document, and we're going to choose a blank document. Okay, and now we have a new page, and we have our cursor here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start just like on the sheet of paper here. We're going to make a vertical column of all these numbers. So we're going to start out at 97. Now bear with me here, and then we're going to say enter because we're doing a vertical column. Then we go into 96. Enter. 91. Enter. 85. Enter. 81. 8, 7, 3, 6, 6, 1, 6, 7, 4, 8, 17, and 0, 6. All right. Now, as you can see, we've got the vertical column set up with in our Word program here, or in our Pages program, and we've copied over this sheet of our readings off of the step wedge. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take this file, and we're going to want to export it as a plain text file. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to say File, Export to Plain Text. You see that right there? Choose Plain Text, and we're going to say Yes, Next. Now it's going to ask us where we want that, and where we are going to put that is in our plain text files folder that we've chosen over here from our quad tone profile. Remember, I had you set up those folders in here. So we've got our plain text files. We're going to open that up, and we are going to export this as starter strip starter strip. Okay? Now that's going to be saved as a plain text file. We're exporting that. And now what I want you to do is go back over here and open up Finder. Now this is very important because now what we're going to use is the data tool. You remember when we added data tool back in a couple of episodes ago. Now, we're going to go here to the Finder. We're going to open up Quad Tone Profiler folder. We're going to our plain text files and we're going to open that up. And now we've got our starter strip and we're going to take that and we're going to drag it over onto our data tool icon down here in the startup dock. So down here, we drop it on data tool and we let it go. Now, that crunches our curve and it opens up data tool as you can see here. And what it's done is this shows us basically our reading from up here at white all the way down here to the black, or maybe it's the other way around, I'm not really sure, but it looks good at this point because what we've got is we've got a relatively straight line. Now what we want to see eventually is a nice line that will run kind of in a straight line right from the top to the bottom. Now you're never going to get it go from right from this corner to this corner. That's just kind of the way it goes. But we want to get it to close, and we don't want a big hump in this. Now what that hump is that's those areas where those numbers were very close together. So now we've got these readings in here, and what we want to do is go down here. Now this is another nice thing to use in data tools. It gives you these smoothing choices, and you can see what happens when I choose each one of them. See how the line here changes a little more smooth than a little less jagged, okay? Now I don't like to go to number 3. I like to always choose number 2 for my smoothing, all right? So we've done that. So now what I want to do is go up here to data tool up here at the top in the menu bar, and we want to go to File, and now what we want to do is choose, I know this sounds very confusing, but now we want to say Export Data. And now what that's going to do is it's going to export it as a data text file. And that data text file is what we want to put into the folder that we created for data text files. And then that in turn is what we're going to take back into Quickcurve DN, Richard Boatwell's program, and use as our adjustment to our starter curve to create a new curve that is corrected more along a straight line. Now I hope you're following that, but this is what we're going to do here. We're going to go up to Export Data, and it's going to give me a text data file here, as you can see. And where I want to export that to is I want to put it in my resources folder. So let's do this. Let's open up this window so we've got more of a choice here. We're going to save this over here in Quad Tone Profile. Now we're going to go to Data Text Files and open that up, and we're going to go into Starter Strip. And what I like to do to delineate this from my other text file, just in case I get them mixed up, is to put another underscore in there and say data. So that file I've named, the one that I'm exporting as a data text file, I've named starter underscore strip underscore data text. Now I am going to export that here into data text files, and we are saving that. Okay, so this is where we go back to Richard Boatwell's program, Quickcurve DN. So we're going to open that up again, and now what we're going to do, we've got curves set up here where we've been working along where we've so far been working, where we set up our starter curve. Now we're going to click on this tab here for linearization. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to load our measurement data in here. And that measurement data is the data text file that we just got from Data Tool. So let's go here to our data text files, and there we go. We've got our data strip text. Okay? Now we're going to say open that. All right? So now it's going to show you basically the same curve that it showed us before. And what we're actually going for is this green line. That's our target curve. So what's happened now is Richard's program is going to take our curve that we've already created as the starter curve. It's going to go apply these adjustments that Data Tool has given us from our reading of the test strip, and it's going to modify that starter curve into another curve that we are going to then add into Quad Tone Rip and print out again another 21-step wedge. Okay? Now I know this is complicated, but if you go back and you just follow me step by step, you're going to get there. Okay, so here we've got that. Now what we want to do is we want to load the quad file to linearize. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and we're going to say load the file. And what we're going to do now is go back to quad tone profile, 21 step scans, curves. We've created this starter curve for P800 already, right? We're going to choose that one. So we choose that, and then this becomes our correction curve. So now we're going to say recalculate and draw new curves. So we've done that. Now the program pretty much already goes through and does that for you. So now that we've done that, we want to save this new one as a new linearized quad file. So what I'm going to do is save linearized quad file, and we are going to save that in our curves again. And we're going to change the name. So we've got starter curve here. What we're going to do is we're going to say, let's just call it one curve P800, okay? So we're going to save that. All right, now we've got that in there. Let's go back over now to our Finder. We go up here to Quad Tone Profiler Accessories, Resources. We go up to our new curve, and we've got our one curve P800, which is our corrected curve, our corrected starter curve. We take that, we copy it, okay? Now we go over here into Quad Tone Rip once again. We open that up. We go down to P800UC, which is our printer, like we did before. We go in there and we paste that item. Now, there we go. We've got one curve P800 quad in there. Now, the thing that we need to do now again is run the install command. So we're going to run that right now. Okay, so as you can see, that's all run, that's installed. Let's go back and read through and make sure everything's installed okay. Yes, it's installed correctly. So we'll close that terminal window. Now what I'm going to have you do is go back to Print Tool. So we're going to open up Print Tool once again, and as you can see, we've got our 21-step wedge in there that we've had all along. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move that down a little bit because once again, we're going to use this same sheet of film. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it down so when we print out our next step wedge, it prints out below that one. So as you can see here, we're going to move down and we're going to give it a little space. And there we go. So now we're ready to print again. So we're going to take this piece of paper, put it down in the printer once again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the print. And this time we're going to go in here and make sure we've chosen Quad P800, which is our Quad Tone Rip driver. And we go down here and we choose Quad Tone Rip. And now we've got our starter curve area. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to choose number one curve P800. Now we are adjusting this 21-step wedge printout with our new curve to hopefully get a better straight line linearization on our curve. Okay? So let's go ahead and print that. Now, as it's printing out, I'm going to shut down here and we're going to go back into the darkroom. I'm going to print this step wedge, and the next time you see me, I'm going to come back with the new corrected step wedge that we can read. The dog knows I'm finishing here. So, okay, let's go on with that. So now I'm back out of the darkroom and I've processed that last strip and I've dried it and brought it out here and already put it onto the scanner. Now, as you can see here, I've already gone through the process of trimming it and cropping it and putting the, turning it into a grayscale and putting the blur over it, okay? So what I want to do is I want to show it to you with the other one. Now this was the first file that we did here down in the bottom. Now you can see the difference in the correction curve now, can't you? There's much more separation. There's separation here in the highlights, okay? So you can see how the second curve goes a little grayer. It's not so white. And then all the way up into here into the darker areas, so your shadows don't drop off so abruptly. Now, I'm going to show you that in the end of this video, what happens when you have a curve that's just close enough and not correct, by showing you images that were printed with corrected curves and with incorrect curves. Anyway, we'll get down to this right now. So you can see that there is definitely a difference in the curve that we just built based upon the readings that we made off of the starter curve. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to do the readings the same that we did on the last one. And I'm going to create a column, a vertical column, and then we're going to go through the process that we did before of creating a plain text file and then exporting that into a data text file from Data Tool. All right, now I'm going to take you through the steps again, but I might speed it up a little bit. Anyway, so here we have this. We're going to take our readings. We're going to start off at the top here. We've got a reading of 98 in the white. So we've got 98, and then we've got 92, and then we've got 85, and then we've got 81, and then we've got 78, then we've got 72, and you already see here now, 4, and 9, 12, 20, 40, 30, 14, 13, and 11. Now, I can tell just from these numbers that this is a much more linearized curve than we did the last time based upon the separation in each one of the steps. Now, when we get down here into the darker, into the shadow detail, there's a little less separation. Now that very often is very difficult to do, especially with the processes that we're working with, just because you don't have quite the exposure scale. And I explained that in the very first video that we did in this series. Now, but this is really good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this over into Pages, and I am going to create, we're going to delete this one here. No, I'll tell you what, we're going to start up a new one. Why don't we do a file, a new, just so we have reference of the first one. We're going to say a blank page, and we're going to do the same thing. So now we're going to do the same way we did before. We're going to take our single column, and we're going to start with our white square on down to our black square. So start number 1, 98, enter, 92, enter, 85, enter, 17, 13, and 11. Okay, so now we've got our new column done. Now, as we did before, we're going to take this and we're going to export it as a plain text file. Then we are going to put that into our plain text files folder that we created, and we're going to call this the same as the curve. So we're going to say 1_curve P800. Okay, now that's our plain text file. We're going to export that. Okay, now we're going to go over here to our plain text file folder, open that up. Now we have our new one, 1_curve P800. We're going to take that and we're going to drag that down. We're grabbing it, we're pulling it down onto the data tool. We're going to let it go, and there we go. Oh my goodness, look at the difference. This is our first one. See that hump in there? And now this is our new corrected curve. Look at how nice and straight that is in comparison to before. This is actually a really good curve, and we could go with it, but as I told you before, good enough is never good enough. This is only our second iteration, and we've come very close on the second iteration, so I think that what we're going to do is we're going to go a third just to get ourselves as close as possible. All right? Now down here, I'm going to choose smoothing number 2 again. Now look at that nice line. Okay, so what we're going to do is now take that up here, go up to File, and we're going to export the data once again. And now we're going to put it into our data text files, right? Data text files folder. And it is 1_curve P800. Now, as before, I delineate it from the other one by calling it _data. All right. Now, I save that. All right. Now, so now what we have to do is go back into Richard's program, into Quickcurve DN. So we're going to open that up here. And what we're going to do now is take that, that data text file that we just created, and we are going to drop it into Richard's program here for adjustment. Now, so the thing is before we were in curve setup here, as you can see. Now what we want to do is we're going to go over and we're going to use the linearization side again, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we want to load the measurement data. So that's going to be the text file that we just did. So we're going to load up the data text files. We're going to go to OneCurve P800 data text. That's the one that we just created. So we're going to say open that. And now you can see we're very, very close to our straight line. You can see that right here we're getting very close. So the correction curve now that we're going to make is very hopefully going to be our final one. But I'm not going to say, you know, never say it's the final one. So anyway, now what we're going to do here is we have to go back down to load the quad file to linearize. So we're going to load that quad file. We're going to go over to our curves. And in here we've got our OneCurve P800 quad. So we're going to open up that one, and now this brings us into the point where this is our correction curve as done. We're going to say recalculate and draw, stays the same. This is now what's going to happen is that the Quickcurve DN program is taking the modified data text file and it's adjusting the last curve we printed with, and it's giving us basically a new curve. So what we're going to do now is once again we're going to go to save this linearized quad file, and we're going to go here and we're going to save it as 2Curve P800, okay? And that now saves it into our curves. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to have to get that curve into quad tone rip. So like before, we're now going to take our starter curve, our number 2 curve, P800, and we're going to drag it. Then we're going to drag it up into the quad tone rip. Now we'll go over to quad tone rip. Now we've got it in our P800. We've got our 2. So now what we have to do is we have to go back and we have to run the install command file again, just like all the other times. So we're running that, it opens up the window, the terminal window, it's running the program. Everything's set, process completed. I go back up and I look for any errors. No errors, everything's good. Close that terminal window. Now what we want to do is we want to go back to Print Tool. And now in Print Tool, we've got our 21-step wedge. We're going to move it down a little bit more. And now we are going to print it with the new curve, okay? So I have to get my film here that we've been working with. I'll put that into the printer. Now we're going to run print. We choose Quad P800. We go down to Layout, Quad Tone Rip, and now we're going to choose the new curve that we've just put in, number 2 curve P800. And we're going to say print. Okay, so now while that's printing, I'm going to get myself together here, let's see, and we're going to go back into the darkroom and we're going to print this, another test strip, and when we're done with that, I'm going to come back out here and we're once again going to do our step wedge check. We're going to go through and we're going to check all of our points along the step wedge. Okay, so see you back here in a minute. Okay, so we're back from the darkroom and we've made our test strip, and it looks really good. Now what I've done is I've come out here and I've taken the liberty, in the interest of time, to scan this test strip already. I've gone through and I've made my readings and I've created this file here, this plain text file that we're going to export now with all of our readings in there. Now what I'm going to do is let's export that like we have been with the other ones. We're exporting it to a plain text file. Next, we're going to choose 2 curve P800, export it. Yes, we're going to replace that. I had done one prior, so I was just overwriting it. And now that we have that, we're going to go over here to the Finder. And as we have in the past, we're going to take that plain text file and we're just going to drag it down over here onto the data tool. And there we go. It opens up our new curve of the reading, and it's very good. It's a great curve. I don't see any real reason to adjust it further from here. I mean, you can, and you know, if you've not had the same results as I have had at home, you might want to run another iteration or another couple of them to try to really fine tune it. But this is a really nice looking straight line linearized curve here. I'm really happy with that. So with that, we're going to use that as our final curve. Now, as I said, you can continue on from this and try to fine tune it even further, but honestly, with the human eye, is not really going to notice much difference in that. Now, as promised before, I'm going to get on to, in a minute, showing you the difference between a kind of good enough curve as opposed to a real finalized curve. Now, but before I get onto that, I just wanted to tell you that this process that we've been through in building this curve can be done with any process. Now, of course, we've done this with the palladium process, but as I said in the beginning of all this, if you were doing this with cyanotype or Van Dyke Brown or even salt printing, something like that, you could build your own curve based upon all the steps that we've done all the way along. Just different process. So anyway, let's get on to, I've got a couple of things here. I also took the liberty of printing out a couple of negatives. Now, a lot of my work is very soft, you know, very smooth gradations kind of things, nighttime photography, that kind of thing, or on water, that kind of deal. Now, those are the places that an incorrect curve can really show up. And what I've done is I've gone and taken the liberty to print a couple of negatives out, one of them from our starter curve and one of them from our finish curve. Now, you'll see the difference in that in our prints here. Now, I'll show you this. Now, you can see here, on this print, it's a dock floating out in the water and the sunlight's coming back on it. Actually, it's moonlight coming back on it. And you can see this very sharp line here. Now that sharp line may be acceptable to kind of somebody that's not got a real trained eye looking at a photograph, but that's not really acceptable. That I call rainbowing, or it's a large step going from a higher highlight down into a shadow detail, and rather than just going as a smooth gradation, it goes as a step. Now you can see that in the negative here. If I can show that to you, I'm not quite sure if you can see that. Hopefully I will put an overlay over this video and you can see what's going on in the negative. Now what happens is you get that step that way. Now that's with the starter curve. Now the starter curve looked good enough, and in certain photographs you wouldn't even notice this and it would be acceptable to you. The thing is, as I always tell people, is good enough is never good enough. You really do want to finalize your curve. Now, what I've done, and I've gone through and I've made another print from the corrected curve and the corrected negative. And in this one, you can see a nice smooth gradation between the shadow and the highlight here. You see what I mean? As opposed to this one, which is a real big step off. Now, that's just one of the ways that an incorrect curve can hurt your photograph. But anyway, as you do this yourself and as you fine-tune your negatives, you're going to find these things yourself. You know, something that might have been an acceptable negative to you at one time now is no longer an acceptable negative because you've gone and created an actual correct curve using this process. Now, another thing that I wanted to reiterate that I was saying in the beginning is that a calibrated monitor really helps you a lot. I mean, you've really got to have a good calibrated monitor, and you know, you can get a Color Monkey or you can get the i1 calibrator. Whatever it may be, you want to have a good screen, a good calibration on your monitor, because that translates into a good print when you've done your digital negative in your final print. Now, that being said, it's not cheap. Another thing is you're going to have to purchase one of these calibrators if you don't already have one, because the calibration that's within the Macintosh itself doesn't quite cut it. You know, you really do want to have a good calibration of your monitor, because in the end what you want to do is you want to have a print that comes out on your screen. You want to be able to manipulate and work on a photograph on your monitor and have that print look very much like your monitor did once you go through the digital negative process and you go through your final printing. So with that, we're kind of there. I'm going to do one more part of this video series. This is part 4. We're going to go on to part 5. And what I'm going to do in part 5 is we're going to take this curve that we've made here, and I'm going to make a few different prints and show you kind of how this curve works in the prints. And I might go through and print a few more with an incorrect curve so that you can see that. But for now, we've made our finished curve, and I hope that you've been able to follow along. I really hope that this has helped you. I know that this is quite complex. It's not nearly as complex as it used to be, but I hope that you followed along, and I hope that you do know that if you do follow me along step by step, you will get there and you will get a nice workable curve for your own printing at home. So anyway, with that, I hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you know of people that are interested in this, please spread the word, because I'm hoping that this series will help people using this Quickcurve DN program, which Richard Boatwell has made. It's a wonderful program. It can be a little complex, and it can be a little hard to follow in written instructions. So I'm hoping that seeing me do it has helped you. And anyway, with that, look for part 5 soon, and I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you have fun with this, all right? Take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.